Maupin. It is a French name. It was a Huguenot name in the States, but 300 years ago. So it's been Maupin for a long time. Unless I'm in France, of course, and then I milk it for all it's worth. Maupin. She went home to her new apartment and cried, falling asleep as the afternoon sun spilled in the window. She woke up at 5 and scoured the kitchen sink for therapy. She ate some blueberry yogurt and made a list of things she would need for her apartment. She wrote a letter to her parents, optimistic but vague. There was a noise outside her door. She listened for a moment, then opened it. Plum-colored silk fluttered at the top of the stairway and descended out of sight. There was a note on Mary Ann's door. Something from my garden to welcome you to your new home. Anna Madrigal. P.S. I'll shoot you if you write your mother about this. Taped to the note was a neatly rolled joint. Wednesday night I went down there and there were an awful lot of young people with very few items in their carts, sort of lolling, over the artichokes and
British
chatting each other up.
Very similar environment.
British libraries. Well, it's pretty much the same principle.
Yeah.
Not this library.
Hello, Armistead. This is Steve McNamara. Congratulations on all that you've done. As you know, Mary Ann Singleton first saw the light of day 33 years ago in a weekly serial in the San Francisco edition of the Pacific Sun, the newspaper I then owned. So here's a question. In the first episodes, the romantic quotient was pretty much heterosexual. Did you have in mind a strong gay element all along, or did that come later? Thanks very much, and best of luck.
Well, thank you, Steve. Yeah, he really got me started. Basically, he was the person I was working for that sent me out on that story at the Marina Safeway, and I eventually said to him, "This is not going to work. I can't get anybody to talk about this." So I made up a fictitious girl, and then he said, "Why don't you follow her and follow Michael Tolliver, the man that she met at the Marina Safeway?" And so that's what I did. No, it wasn't. I was actually still sort of in the closet as a gay man when I first started writing Tales of the City. I knew I was going to include gay characters, but I didn't know to what degree they would become, part of the real fabric of it. And I didn't know what degree that they would lead me into a more open and happy state. When I started writing for the Chronicle a couple of years after the Pacific Sun, I had to give them 6 weeks worth of columns before they would start printing the story, because they wanted to make sure that they were well ahead of me, so I couldn't, it didn't work because I ate up my backlog very quickly and pretty soon was writing, say, Wednesday's column on a Monday. And so Michael Tolliver, the gay character, was not introduced until 6 weeks plus 1 day, because I was aware, this was a long time ago, 31 years ago, and I was aware that they might be nervous about the introduction of gay characters. They weren't visible in popular culture at that time at all. It's hard to imagine, but it was quite radical to even discuss a gay life in any way, to acknowledge the existence of a gay person. And so I eased into it. The Chronicle's reaction to it was to create a chart in the managing editor's office that had 2 columns, heterosexual and homosexual. And every time a new character was introduced, they were put into the appropriate column. And the only way I finally brought this to an end was I created an episode in which Franny Halcyon, who is this sort of drunken society matron who's part of the story, how can I put this discreetly? She passes out in her herb garden one afternoon and wakes up to find that her dog has been pleasuring himself. And I made them put the dog in the heterosexual column. I revealed in the newspaper, to the chagrin of a number of people who were telling everybody in their office that they were going skating on Tuesday nights. Michael sees this really handsome guy skating up ahead of him, and he's sort of transfixed by him to the degree that he forgets the fact that he doesn't really know how to stop on roller skates, and he crashes into the back of him, and they have a huge collision. Michael's face was covered with blood. The blond man helped him to his feet. "Jesus, are you all right?" Michael poked his face cautiously with his fingertips. "It's my nose. It's okay. It bleeds if you don't talk nice to it." Are you sure? Can I get you a Kleenex? Thanks. I think I'll hobble off to the head. When he returned, the blond man was waiting for him. They just announced couples only, he grinned. You man enough for that? Michael grinned back. Sure, just tell me when you're going to stop. So this time they moved as a unit, hand gripped in hand, under the twirling mirror ball. My name is John, said the blond man. I'm Michael, said Michael, just as his nose started to bleed again.
I have one question for you. Would you say Tales of the City could be defined as a gay book? If so, how would you define gay literature? Thank you very much.
I always have a hard time with this question because I've always been open about my homosexuality, and I've been proudly open. I mean, I think it's been my job to be honest about my own life and to include what I know about that in my work. But I've always been writing about everybody for everybody, and I never want to say that I'm not. So to the degree that gay literature is somehow perceived as something that's just for gay people, then that's not what I do. It's always tricky because I haven't been quiet about it. I could have shut my mouth and, not had been branded as a gay writer, but I think it's been my job to do that. There is a body of gay literature, of course, wonderful writers who've written about the gay experience, and I like to think of myself as one of them. But I get a little disturbed by the sort of compartmentalizing of literature, because storytelling is storytelling, and it should reach to everyone. And that's the way we broaden our own lives, by reading about other people's experience. The categories sometimes bother me. I'm always, in the States, I notice the easiest way to tell who the underclass in the States is to go into a bookstore and you see the African American shelf, the women's shelf, the Chinese American shelf. I remember my friend Amy Tan saying when they first started sticking her on the Chinese American shelf because that's her heritage, but in fact she writes stories that everybody enjoys. So it's a whole mixed bag, and I hope, and it's one that I hope is never misinterpreted, because I think I've waved the flag for open homosexuality as much as anybody, but I am still, my aim is to write for the entire world.
And thanks especially to this month's guest, Armistead Maupin.
Thank you.